Canada's new tariffs on U.S. goods raise the cost of everyday items for households on both sides of the border, while testing the next phase of trade talks. This is Omni View, episode 155. Canada announced tariffs worth $20 billion targeting U.S. milk, steel products, and plywood. The move follows earlier U.S. duties and is presented as a direct response to protect Canadian industries. Officials describe the list as calibrated to match the scale of American actions. The products chosen include staple dairy items and key construction materials that cross the border daily. Canadian government statements frame the tariffs as a necessary defense of domestic producers facing sudden U.S. barriers. U.S. trade officials have countered that the Canadian list escalates tensions without addressing underlying disputes over dairy access and metal imports. Both sides agree the measures will raise prices for importers and consumers in the short term. They differ on whether the tariffs will pressure negotiations toward a settlement or simply prolong the standoff. The BBC reports live coverage of the tariff announcement and immediate reactions from both capitals. The announcement adds a concrete data point to the ongoing trade track between the two countries. Trade representatives from both governments are scheduled to resume technical talks within the next 2 weeks. Shifting now to a developing story in New York. New York State Assembly member Zohran Mamdani publicly opposed a planned event in the city that would host a leader from India's Hindu nationalist group. He cited concerns over the group's record on minority rights. Organizers have not yet confirmed whether the event will proceed. The statement came in the form of a public letter addressed to city officials and community groups. Mamdani, who represents a district with large South Asian populations, argues that platforming the group risks normalizing exclusionary politics. Supporters of the event, including some Indian American organizations, view the gathering as a legitimate cultural and political exchange that should not be blocked by one lawmaker's objections. Reuters' details of Mamdani's statement and the event plans show the disagreement centers on where the line falls between free association and accountability for overseas political movements. Local media outlets have noted that similar events have taken place in other U.S. cities without comparable public pushback. Next, a shift in Israeli polling. Former General Gadi Eisenkot, a newcomer to electoral politics, is attracting voters who identify as both right-wing and centrist in current polling. An interactive tracker shows his support holding steady despite the absence of a clear ideological label. The tracker updates daily and breaks down voter coalitions by region and age group. Eisenkot's backers say his security background offers pragmatic leadership at a time of regional tension. Critics within established parties argue that his lack of firm positioning leaves voters uncertain about future policy directions on settlements and negotiations. The Economist's interactive tracker and analysis of voter coalitions indicate that his appeal rests more on personal trust than on a detailed platform. Analysts following the tracker note that his support base includes both urban professionals and rural security voters. In Alaska, the Senate primary produced an unusual matchup. Darren J. Sullivan finished among the top candidates in Alaska's U.S. Senate primary held on August 18th. The race now moves to a ranked choice general election in which he will face the Republican incumbent who shares the same name. The primary results were certified by state election officials shortly after polls closed. Sullivan's campaign emphasized local economic issues and bipartisan cooperation. The incumbent's team has highlighted experience and committee influence in Washington. AP coverage of primary results and general election outlook shows both candidates must now navigate a ranked choice system that rewards broader second preference support. Campaign filings show both contenders raised comparable funds in the weeks leading up to the primary vote. Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates told Reuters he hopes to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping later this year to discuss coordinated limits on dangerous AI model releases. He suggested China might accept restrictions if the United States moved first. The interview covered both safety concerns and the potential for joint technical standards. Gates frames the proposal as a practical step to reduce global safety risks from advanced systems. Chinese officials have not commented publicly on the idea, while some U.S. technology executives have questioned whether bilateral agreements can keep pace with rapid private sector development. Industry observers note that any agreement would likely require verification protocols similar to those used in earlier technology accords. An analysis finds that many British employees are neither fully working nor fully on holiday during traditional vacation periods, resulting in lower output than peers in France and Germany. The pattern is described as an epidemic of skiving and shirking. The study compared calendar data across the 3 countries for the same summer weeks. Employers cite blurred boundaries between remote work and time off as a productivity drag. Labor advocates point to long hours and limited leave as reasons staff feel they cannot fully disconnect. The data show measurable differences in average days away from desks compared with neighboring economies. Company surveys included in the analysis indicate that hybrid schedules contribute to the partial attendance trend. Now, some progress worth knowing about. Recent box office data showed Gen Z and millennial viewers accounting for a rising share of theater tickets, reversing earlier fears that streaming would empty cinemas. Films aimed at these groups have posted stronger openings than industry forecasts predicted. The trend appears in multiple major markets tracked by theater chains. Theater chains report that social and communal aspects of moviegoing are drawing younger crowds back. Streaming services continue to compete for the same viewers at home, yet the in-person trend has lifted revenue for several releases this summer. The shift remains concentrated in urban markets and has not yet reached pre-pandemic overall attendance levels. Distributors have adjusted marketing campaigns to emphasize group outings and special screenings. Now, to really understand in this story, there is something most coverage leaves out about how governments coordinate on AI safety rules. The actual process involves aligning export controls, compute access, and model release thresholds across rival regulatory systems. When one country sets licensing requirements for advanced chips or training runs, companies must decide whether to comply globally or split their research, which raises costs and slows deployment. The last comparable effort, nuclear non-proliferation talks in the 1970s, showed that early bilateral signals can create templates later adopted by wider groups, but only when verification mechanisms are built in from the start. In practice, governments often begin with shared technical definitions before moving to enforcement language. Historical records from arms control negotiations show that early agreement on measurement units reduced later disputes over compliance. Companies operating across borders face immediate decisions about where to locate new data centers once thresholds are announced. Knowing this, when you hear claims that a single meeting will solve AI risk, you can check whether the discussion includes concrete verification steps or remains at the level of principle. The detail worth watching next is whether any proposed limits name specific technical thresholds, such as training compute measured in floating point operations, that both sides would accept as binding. Readers can examine public export control lists published by the U.S. Commerce Department and compare them with any joint statements that emerge from future meetings. If you want to go deeper on the tariffs, compare how Reuters and The Economist are covering it. Tomorrow, watch for any signals from trade representatives as they prepare for the upcoming technical talks. That's OmniView. As always, compare outlets, look for primary documents, and separate what's known from what's assumed. The world is complicated, but it's not beyond understanding. And you just spent a few minutes understanding it better. If that's worth something to you, subscribe wherever you listen. See you tomorrow. And if you'd rather watch than listen, find us on YouTube at NARA Network. Links in the show notes. This show comes to you from the NARA Network. If you want another sharp daily briefing, Unintended Consequences has you covered. True stories of good intentions that backfired. All our shows are free at naranetwork.com. New to the network? naranetwork.com Start Here picks the right daily briefing for you in about 2 minutes. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.